All right, you ready?
All right, cool. Let's do it, bro. I'm excited.
Let's do it. Same. What is up, guys? Nasir here, and welcome to the KharmaKast, a podcast where I just kick back, chill out, and have a relaxed conversation with people I admire. Today, we're joined by Kenji Tomita, a biomedical scientist and medical student at King's College London. He's the first ever friend I made in medical school, a very kind-hearted man, and someone who spends a lot of his free time helping aspiring medical students get accepted into medical school. Kenji, welcome to the KharmaKast.
Thanks very much, man. I'm really glad to be here.
Hey, Kenji. I was just saying to you, like, how happy I am to have you on. We've been friends for a really long time. You're a very, very solid dude. And yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thanks very much, man. I'd definitely say something about you. Could definitely verify that.
Habibi. So let's get started by, if you want to give us like an update or an overview of who you are, if somebody listening hasn't seen your content before, anything like that, give us a cheeky intro.
Cool, man. Yeah, you pretty much took it away, but my name is Kenji. I'm a fourth year medical student studying at King's College London, like Nasir. I'm also a biomedical science graduate. So before medicine, I did 3 years of my undergrad in biomedical science. When I started medical school, I started making videos about what it's like to be medical students, trying to help as many people as I can get into medical school. And also just vibes about life. And on the side, I also did a bit of research, play some Call of Duty Warzone, of course.
Hey.
And that's pretty much it, man.
Lovely. Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of those things over the course of this podcast. But I want to start with when you first started making YouTube videos, because I feel like we had a fairly similar start. We were making videos about pretty similar topics, trying to help other students get into medical school. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about why it is that you started doing that. What is it, almost 3 years ago now, over 3 years ago?
Yeah, man. I think the reason why is because when I first started medical school, there wasn't that many people who were making videos about getting in as a graduate. So for me, getting into medical school wasn't the easiest path. So, having to go through 3 years biomedical science, not many people knew about that path into medicine. And I kind of put myself in the mind of Kenji, who was 3 years younger than me. Yes, 3 years younger than me. And I'm trying to make videos that would benefit myself when I was 18, 17, because when I was applying to medical school, there wasn't many people out there who were openly telling people about their failure, telling people about where they fell short. And I was making videos that would have inspired me when I was 17, 18, and just trying to give myself information that I didn't have. When I was getting to medical school, everyone, including my teachers, were telling me that don't apply as a graduate, so much debt, it's just so competitive, it's not going to happen, which really put me in not the best place as I could have been if I had videos mine to watch. So that's pretty much where I started, man.
Well said, Kenji. Well said. I really feel like I have a similar story. When I didn't get accepted to medical school and I went to do my undergraduate degree in Canada, everyone was saying applying as a graduate is impossible. It's very, very difficult. And the first port of call for us, like millennials, I guess, is to go online and Google things or like search things up.
Straight up.
And there was like literally no info there, like zero, The best piece of information that I found was a PDF document released by, I don't know which organization in the UK, that just said, these are the like competition rates for each medical school. That was it. Literally a PDF document. And it had a bit of color, so I got excited, but that was the only useful thing that we had. And so similar to you, I always say the same thing.
Exactly.
The day I got accepted to medical school, I said to my mom on the phone, as I was telling her, I was like, I'm going to help other people get into medical school as well. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. It's pretty wild where that was and where we are now.
100%, man.
So, Kenji, we've actually made a couple of videos together. Do you remember those?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, bro. I was watching one the other day. It's crazy looking back. Like, not just like how you and I were, but also the quality of our videos. There's a different vibe, man. Different vibe.
I remember being so embarrassed filming the video in front of you because it was the first time I filmed in front of somebody else. You were the first person.
Yeah.
I was like,
oh man, I remember that. I remember actually being in your room. I think like jamming to PlayStation one day. We're like, man, let's just record videos.
Yeah.
And we just got our phones out and put our phones up like on the table and just start recording.
Literally.
Crazy, man.
Literally. And those videos in King's, we were recording in King's classrooms. And, every now and again we'd hear a
my
noise.
gosh,
Somebody
yeah.
would come in for a tutorial. There would be like a professor walking around. We'd just be like, oh, shit, like, let's close everything quickly. So embarrassing.
Yeah. Everything, hide everything. That's crazy, man. We need to do a part 2 of like where we are now, man.
Absolutely. That would be a great idea, actually. I'm very, very down.
100%. Well, I guess this is part 2.
This is, yeah. It's kind of coming full circle. Almost 3 years later. Yeah. Anyways.
Crazy, man.
So Kenji, you've been pretty heavily involved in the research world during our time in medical school, and research is something that I've dabbled into over my summers. I fly to Toronto and I do research there, where I did my undergraduate degree. But you've kind of been doing it alongside medical school while here in the UK. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, man. So as you said, in my biomed days, actually, I did quite a lot of research as well. Like over my summers, pretty much every summer, I'd spend at least 8 weeks in a lab. And when I got into medical school, I said, why not? Like, why not just carry it on? So in my first year, I pretty much worked full time in a lab in Guy's Hospital doing research. So I'd spend a day in the labs and then catch up with lectures in the evenings, or just do my lectures when I can in between my experiments. And then pretty much every single summer since then as well, I've done research, and I've been really enjoying, man. Even till today, I pretty much always have at least one research project going on the side in my spare time, man, and it's just really enjoyable.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I have a lot of questions, but first of all, what's the primary driving force for you doing research? What do you enjoy about it the most that gets you to keep going back every summer or during medical school?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, man. I think what drives me most is that, so medicine is really interesting, and I find, obviously medicine is really interesting. That's why I do it. But everything we're taught in medical school is all the information is going to be shared across all of us. So there's nothing necessarily new or innovative that we're being taught necessarily.
Okay.
So to get out of that, to kind of keep my brain stimulated and keep my mind thinking, that's why I really like research, because as I'm learning the medical content and learning the core curriculum, on this side I can be in the lab, looking at things that no one's ever looked at before, and looking at really groundbreaking science, which is what gets me really, really excited, really, really motivated. And also through that, you meet so many people who are like-minded, in the process. And it's taken me to Greece, it's taken me to Taiwan, to the Philippines, literally flying around the world, getting involved in research, meet people who are like me, and just trying to keep my mind stimulated to move past what we're taught in medical school, pretty much.
Amazing, man. That mental stimulation that you talk about, I think, is really prominent in research. For me, it's similar to there's biology, there's chemistry, there's maths, there's all these subjects, and then there's physics. And physics for me is and computer science. Those two have just entirely different methods of thinking, methods of learning. It's very application based. And I really felt like research was the same. It's one thing to copy an experiment or follow some steps, and it's another thing to think outside the box how you would do this literally for the first time. Nobody else has done it before. How would you do it? What do you think you're going to find?
That's true.
And it's an incredible sort of thought process.
Definitely, because I remember when I was doing my work experience, actually, when I was 20 years old, and the guy who was shadowing had his own lab. And I asked him straight up, I was like, what's your drive to do this? You're spending so much of your time, so much of your money in this research field. And he said to me that eventually when you become a consultant, everything becomes routine. Everything becomes almost boring in a way, because you see day to day. You've been in the field for 10, 15, 20 years, however long that might be. And he said to him, the only thing that really keeps him going and keeps his mind stimulated, staying young and really being in that constant thinking process is his lab. And that's why he does it. Yeah. And it makes so much sense, man.
Damn.
100%.
That's interesting. The PI at the lab that I was working at, he would do 2 or 3 days a week in the clinic and then 2 or 3 days a week in the lab. And I always wondered, it's a really attractive lifestyle in the sense that you have this variety and you have so much different thinking patterns and levels of stimulation. So it's not really like your week is the same. There's so much going on, and so everything's going to keep being new and fresh and interesting. But I don't know if it's for me long term. Research, it has its pros and cons. What do you find most challenging about it?
Oh, I think there's a lot of pressure in research. I think when you're at the level of a PI and you're like, you're leading a whole entire group, there's a lot of pressure to keep publishing and keep,
definitely.
Putting out high quality research. And if you don't do that, then we risk losing your lab. And a lot of the times the PIs have to raise like 600 grand per year just to keep the lab going and keep it open. Don't quote me on that figure, but it's a really high number. Yeah. And if you don't reach that limit, then you're out basically. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, in the research field. I think as much as you are helping the NHS, helping science, go forward, there's a lot of pressure to like maintain that high quality of standard. Which I'm not. Which I think is a bit too stressful for what I want, but we'll see.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask you: have you ever worked with animals in a research lab?
I've worked with mice or rats. Yeah, one of the two.
Were they big or were they small?
They were not bigger than I thought they would be.
Okay, then they were rats.
The mouse. Oh no, actually no, sorry, it was small. It had a really long tail.
Oh, it was small. Okay.
It was pretty small.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a mouse.
Yeah, like you will know immediately, and the reason is that I was working with mice, and then when I saw a rat, I was like, oh my God, like I could never even come close to that. It was like 5 times as big.
They're really big.
They're massive, yeah. But apparently they're a lot easier to work with. They're more chill, less bitey, which is a big plus if you work in a lab with mice.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Do you remember what strain you worked with by any chance of mice?
I wouldn't have thought that. Oh man, I can't remember exactly which ones. They're genetically modified mice. But
to be honest, I can't remember the strain either.
Which one?
Actually, maybe BALB 157 or something. Whatever, I don't remember. But the point is that different strains of mice have different personality traits. And so like everyone in our lab knew like, oh, if you're working with the black mice, like, oh my God, like be careful, make sure you get them a good hold from behind the head. But if you're working with white mice, everything's chill. They'll crawl on your arm, no problem.
Oh my gosh.
So I always found that quite funny.
To give you advice on how to work with them. That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. I really enjoyed my research time, but I think I enjoyed it a lot because I knew that there was a finite date. I knew that everything I was doing was for a relatively short period of time, let's say 8 weeks.
So what would stop you from doing it like long term?
For me, I found that research was too slow. On a day-to-day basis, I didn't have a feeling of making a change or accomplishing something or finding something. Whereas I feel like, and I hope that in my career as a doctor, on a daily basis with a lot of actions that I do, even between hours, that I'm hopefully seeing some sort of change, some sort of result quickly. I'm very much like, I like that instant gratification. Well, I don't for a lot of things, but in research, I found that it was like too delayed.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Which is why I think it might be cool to do maybe like 3 or 4 days of research. 3 or 4 days of working in a hospital or GP, and then doing like 1 day of research, just to keep that like long-term process going, and also like the short-term gratification as well. That's
a good point. You definitely can balance it. You don't have to be a full-time researcher. It is something you can do on the side or part-time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm considering that one day maybe.
Yeah. The good thing is like we can keep our options open. We don't really have to tie ourselves down to anything right now. We can explore as we go.
That's facts, bro. 100%.
Kenji, something big that I want to ask you in this podcast, and something that I want to osmosis hard from you through the screen, is I've told you this.
I know it's coming.
Do you know it's coming? I've told you this many times before. That Kenji,
I know it's coming.
You know it's coming. Kenji, you are probably the most reflective person that I know. And I want to know if you do anything, if you actively work on it, if there's any techniques that you have, something that sort of helps you think through your decisions and understand why it is you do the things that you do. I admire it so much, and I want to learn. I want to be more like that. So tell me about it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for saying that, man. And I knew it was coming because I've definitely heard you say it a few times.
Definitely.
But so I think what has brought me into this whole area of like emotional intelligence, that some people might call it, is reading, man. A lot of time I spend is reading through like things like the School of Life. Have you heard of School of Life?
I haven't, no. What is it?
Okay, so it's just basically this whole entire like online kind of group of philosophers that post articles all the time on problems that we come into every single day. So a lot of it is to do with philosophy and emotional intelligence. And I spend a lot of time like reading through every single article, reading their books as well. And that's pretty much how I don't know, develop this thing that you've described.
This trait that I've attached to you.
Definitely, because the thing is, like, there's so much emphasis in our world today is put on academic intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have like, you know, I have degrees on my wall, and I have things on my wall that everyone kind of sees as good or as great, right? You being academically intelligent, having a degree is seen as a very positive thing in our world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is no degrees and there's no like recognition for emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like when we go to school, for example, there's nothing in our curriculum at school that tells us how to deal with the problems that we come into every single day in life. You know? So that's kind of why I started getting into this.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like that responsibility kind of falls on our parents to teach us how to interact with people who, you know, might be in a negative headspace or might have, I don't know, be in like a bad situation, how to approach them. Don't smile, don't laugh, like these types of things, which seem very, very basic. But, you know, you'll be shocked at how many people you come across whose ability to read social cues is like very, very off. And I know that we've discussed this a decent amount of times in person as well. I mean,
it's kind of difficult because some people are lucky. Some people are lucky to be blessed with parents who either maybe look into emotional intelligence and educate themselves that way, or have just been born with great emotional intelligence. You know? Right. And it's so much. You know, some people are lucky and some people aren't. And if you're in the position where maybe you're not as lucky, then I think it can be very difficult to try and land on emotional intelligence by luck. You know, a lot of it I think has to be like, a lot of it, you know, should be learned in school. The same way it is learned in school, but unfortunately, there's no like emphasis on that in our culture or society. Yeah,
it's only learned through experience. And like you said, if you're not so lucky to sort of have an innate emotional intelligence, then you almost have to mimic or focus on what other people are doing and see what works, what doesn't work. It's almost through trial and error. But it is an extremely valuable skill.
Definitely. And I think experience is one thing. I think ideally that would be the best scenario. But a lot of the times when let's say if I haven't been gifted with parents who taught me that, by the time I get to the position in life where that's an experience that should teach me, you know, these skills, it may be too late, for example.
You won't be ready.
So I think a lot of it can actually be learned through like active learning, you know, through reading books to do with emotional intelligence, you know, through actually trying to understand our feelings, understand how we can control our feelings, interpret them. And that I think will really, really help a lot of us, including myself, in dealing with life and the stresses that come with life.
That's a really good point you make, Kenji. And you know, now that you mention it, that you say you learned a lot of this through books, I have to agree with you. I was talking to Rachel on the first podcast that we did on the KharmaKast. Shout out episode 1. And I was saying to her that I haven't cried in like 4 years, and I've come close to crying, but I've held it back, and that's a problem, and that's something I should work on and I should fix. But in the context of this conversation, the times that I've come very close to crying have been when I'm listening to audiobooks. Yeah. And you're right.
Why is that?
Why is that? I mean, something sad was happening at the time, but I think similar to what you just said, that like audiobooks or reading books, and same thing for me, like they open up my mind in a way that really nothing else does, and they get me thinking about a scenario in a like more creative way than if I was just visually absorbing information or reading information without visual. When you're reading, you kind of have to make it up yourself and imagine this world, or like place yourself in a scenario. And so maybe it makes me think more and get more in touch with my emotions and how I'm feeling about the scenario that I'm consuming. So it's interesting that you say that's how you learned a lot of this.
That's deep, man.
That's deep.
Yeah, because maybe the audiobook is like tapping into like your subconscious mind and like hypnotizing your thoughts out, your emotions, your inner emotions out.
Maybe
somehow.
Actually, I can't believe I didn't used to read.
That's interesting, bro.
I look back at myself in high school and my whole undergraduate degree, and I'm like, what were you doing, man? You know, when I discovered audiobooks, it was a life-changing experience for me. I would sit on a bench in a park and just listen and look.
No, man,
it was incredible. Yeah, it's something that I'm trying to do often. I know you read quite a lot.
100%, man. I didn't start reading actually like properly until probably first year of medical school. I hadn't touched a single book for a good 6-7 years until since Harry Potter, basically, until medical school. And that's when I started like getting into it. And then an Audible came like a really big thing, and then I started getting a lot more into it as well.
Do you read on your Kindle now, or do you listen to audiobooks, or a mixture of both?
I do both. Actually. I think so. My Kindle is more for things that I mostly do is like emotional intelligence stuff, because I like to think about it really slowly and highlight stuff, because they tend to be the things I like to highlight and recall later on.
Okay.
The things I listen to on Audible are things that I don't necessarily I don't believe I'll need to like take note of, like a physical note of, and it's something I can do like passively. So it's more like finance, books to do with finance. And more like material things rather than like emotional intelligence stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. How about you, man? You pretty much all Audible?
I'm all Audible, yeah. I was talking to Elizabeth about this on a previous episode, that the idea of sitting down to read is like so foreign to me. It's like,
for real.
Just the idea of not moving and like reading a book. Is just like in my head absurd. I'm like, I could be traveling to the tube. I could be on a bus.
You do it every day for medicine,
I could be running. Yes, but medicine is like an academic thing, whereas reading for me is like an entertainment. It's like a for fun thing. And I cannot learn medicine while running or while on the bus or while on the tube. I can't. So kind of by default, I have to be stationary. Whereas books, with the blessing of audiobooks and podcasts, like I'm able to be moving around and whatever. And so I can't think of it.
Okay, but would you ever sit down on your bed or like on a seat and like listen to an audiobook, or do you have to be moving?
So the last time I did that was in my final year of my undergraduate degree, which is when I discovered audiobooks to begin with. And looking back, I think the only reason that I did it then is because I had finished school, I had graduated, and I was like literally just chilling. It was my summer holiday. But in the context of being in medical school and stuff, I wouldn't spend time doing that. I'm not saying that it's a good or a bad thing. I probably should do more things of that nature. But yeah, I just prefer to listen to it doing something.
No, I feel you. I do find it a lot more difficult, like sitting down at home reading. That's not really something I do as much. Like I definitely do it, but most of it is in bed. So maybe before bed, I'll read, or when I wake up in the morning and have a coffee. But I would never be like, oh, it's 2 o'clock now. Like at 3 o'clock, I'm gonna sit down and read. Like I would never do that. Yeah. Unless I'm on holiday, because when I'm on holiday is when I bang out like as many books as I can, because I'm like surrounded by beautiful like view or weather, and that's when I like really, really love reading. But in my house, like where I am now, it's not really something I just like sit down and do unless I'm in bed, like getting ready for
bed. Fair.
Yeah.
Besides listening to audiobooks, the ones that you don't take notes on, how do you sort of like unwind and relax, take breaks from medical school, YouTube videos, research, and jobs, things like that? How do you rest and relax properly?
So resting, relaxing, most of the time it's like gym. Like I really, really enjoy going to gym. So that like running is a huge like mental thing that I love doing.
Absolutely.
Obviously now it's been more difficult. I love to play Xbox games. So as you and I know, like we jam in the evening sometime. I love playing with the boys. That's a big part of it. Outside of lockdown, I love to travel. I think traveling, whenever I get like a space of time, as you know, like as we have done, whenever I have a block of time, bro, like I have to be abroad, ideally, and that's where I get most of my rest on, man.
Nice. The other week, I was trying to explain to someone who's never played video games before the power of being immersed in a video game, and I was trying to bring across to her how it differs from watching a movie. Okay. So she was telling me like, but like there's a piece of plastic in your hand, like you move around a cartoon character. And I was trying to explain to her games like Uncharted, Until Dawn, Last of Us, like these types of third person explorative games where they have like a really serious story and like they're made by big movie companies like Sony. They have tons of money and time and effort and great actors in them. And I was trying to explain just how incredible it is to be the person moving the character in a movie. And she just didn't get it.
You can't explain. That's something you can't explain.
You can't explain it, right?
Game and like get involved. There's no way to explain it. And it's crazy actually. Have you seen your heart rate? Have you measured your heart rate when you're playing video
No,
games?
no, I haven't.
Bro, my heart rate gets so high. And the
Oh,
highest it's
that's a
gotten is
good
like
one.
110, 120
Oh, wow.
playing video games. So it
Okay,
actually gets really, really high, man. Like
nice.
adrenaline is crazy.
I've never done that. But it's interesting you say that because so my favorite video game of all time, ever, is the Last of Us series.
Okay.
And
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'm so into it that I've seen every behind the scenes video, like everything about it online. And part of the
Okay.
testing phase that they do for that game is they get people to come play the game and
Yeah.
they hook them up to like blood pressure monitors, heart rate monitors, like brainwave
Whoa.
EEGs and stuff, and they measure.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they measure heart rate to see like, did the scene that they created actually invoke the response in you that they wanted? Did it scare you enough? Did it get you excited enough?
Yeah.
Did it
Okay.
activate that
And
part of your
that's the
brain?
aim, isn't it?
And that's the game.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I feel like video games are like just next level to movies. You know, there's like pictures,
Yeah. Oh,
there's
dude.
movies, and there's video games.
100%. 100%. Because in movies, you're sat down and you know that this person is not you. Like it's a different person. You know. But when you're in the game, there is some level of like it being yourself, and you feel like you actually are there. You know, there is a bit of a separation in movies that you can't recreate. Like you can't really recreate, man.
Definitely. And for example, The Last of Us 2, it's a 40-hour game, 40. So,
Oh my God.
like, you know, it's not like you sit down and watch a 2-hour movie. Like this is a multiple month commitment. Well, for me and my sister anyway, because we played it for a long time. So, you know,
and you invest in the characters, man. That's 40 hours of investing in one person.
So much. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
100%.
Kenji, besides the gym and video games, I was this close to including in the intro, but then I was like, nah. I was this close to including in the intro that you're a terrible ping pong player.
Oh man, I'd have to bring up some old footage on my YouTube channel of you losing. We still need to get the tournament in, man.
Yeah, we do.
Tournament.
Kenji and I have had a long-standing beef over ping pong games. And back in the day when the shed was still open on King's College campus, there was a ping pong table in there. And, you know, Kenji and I would be there like every day just banging out games.
Oh, man, every day. We'd go to the library and like we'd spend 2 hours working and like 3 hours playing ping pong.
Exactly.
More time we spend in the play ping pong than we're actually in the library.
So true. And we'd get so sweaty, so sweaty. Sometimes we'd bring a change of clothes. You'd always have Dio, which was very clutch.
Yeah. I'd have a gym bag with me just to prepare for
ping pong. Yeah, it would get really intense. One thing we wanted to do, do you remember? We wanted to do like a big med school YouTubers ping pong tournament.
Yeah, man.
Hopefully when things open up, we should get that sorted.
100%, man. Comment down below if you guys want to see that.
Yeah, comment down below who we should include in that tournament.
Yeah. That'd be so sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenji, I want to talk to you a little bit about traveling. Because as you said, anytime you get a break, you're traveling. And that's definitely the case. I can confirm. And I've seen a bunch of videos of your travel vlogs. I've talked to you extensively about them. We've been on holiday together. We went to Marrakesh.
100%.
And had an absolute blast. Amsterdam as well. Yes. And we were supposed to travel again pre-devastating coronavirus.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me about traveling, man. Tell me about why you travel. Where you've traveled.
Man, so the most recent trip I did was right before Corona, the summer before Corona. And as you know, so I booked it was crazy. During exam period, I booked an outbound flight to Taiwan, and I booked a return from Hong Kong. And those were the only two tickets I booked. Yeah. And one was at the very start of summer. The other one was at the very, very end of summer. And the goal was basically to go to Taiwan, do a bit of research, do a bit of like academic stuff, and then spend the other 2 months just traveling as much as I can.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, man. I love to travel because I think just meeting new people, because it's so easy, especially in medicine, to like be stuck in a box where you meet the same people every day, the same sorts of personalities every day. It's so difficult to expand your mind. And kind of going back to what we said about emotional intelligence, I think so much of that emotional growth is through meeting people who aren't like you. You know, and in medicine, like a lot of us think the same, a lot of us act the same. Yeah. It's a very it's a system that's designed to train doctors who are very, very similar in how they act, right?
It's very true.
So in order to break that kind of area and community, you know, flying to the other side of the world, I think is the best way to do it. It's just to try and open my mind as much as possible. And I think that really will come back to us and make us better doctors, having had those experiences. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like I'll always say one of the best things that's happened to me is that I was like an international student growing up, and that I've studied in the UK, in Greece, in Canada, and just the ability, honestly, to talk to and connect with people of varying cultures, varying backgrounds is so powerful, so powerful.
Oh man,
there's plenty of people who just can't get along with people unless they're very similar to them.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think as humans, I think the first thing we do when we meet someone is to try find things that make us like
common.
Things in common, right? Yeah. That's the straight away what we try to do to make conversation. But I think actually one way to do it is to try stay away from the things we have in common and try look for the things we don't have in common, so we can both learn new things.
Yeah.
There's this quote, I can't remember which Bible. There's this quote that says, if two people have the same opinion, then one of them is not necessary. One opinion is not necessary. Nice. So it's really cool to just try and meet people who have different views than you do. And I think that really has effect on like every single part of your life. You know, once you can break that.
Yeah. One of the most sought after personality traits that I look for in a friend is somebody who butts heads with me and does not share my opinion on varying topics. Yeah. And you know, like I'm never scared to say my opinion. There's obviously social context and social cues that come into account. But if I disagree with a person in front of me, I would never mind saying like, oh, actually, like I don't think that's the case. The worst thing, you know, when you're talking to someone and anything you say, they're like, yeah, like I agree.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, you're right, blah, blah. It's just like, why are we conversating? 100%. You know, I'm not talking to an echo. I don't want like somebody to echo what I'm saying. I want to have a discussion about this. I want to talk about what's going on.
Exactly, and it's so important to not be surrounded by yes men, man, like who are going to be like yes to everything. You know, you need to have, I think, like you said, the closest friend to you or your closest friends need to be able to tell you when you go wrong or when you do something that they think isn't right or isn't like you, and that brings so much value to your group, bro.
Absolutely. Right now, that's you and I we're studying for our OSCE exams at medical school. So for anyone listening who isn't familiar, these are objective, structured clinical exams. Basically what it is like the practical exams that we have in medical school that test our skills and our talking abilities, everything that's not circling multiple choice questions on a piece of paper, basically. And we're me and Kenji and one other person, Georgina, we're like meeting up over Zoom as often as we can to have these discussions. And one of the main reasons we're doing it with each other, and we have been doing it with each other since late year 2, maybe year 3.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that I have full confidence that both of these people will have no problem telling me, hey, Nasir, actually, that was really bad. You missed this, you forgot that. What you should have done was blah, blah, blah. And those are hard people to come by, genuinely. Like, it's not every day that somebody butts heads with you or says, actually, no, I disagree.
Definitely.
It's actually kind of uncommon.
It's a really rare thing because I think it's either that or the opposite, where people are maybe too critical or don't know how to deliver critique in the right way. So I think what I like about you and Georgina is that you will butt heads with me and you will tell me no, but you do it in a way that doesn't like degrade me or make me even less like confident than I was before. So I think it's either or normally, but it's really difficult to come across people like you and Georgina who will give me the advice I need in the right format that I can understand it, and that will better me.
That's true. That's very, very important and very well said.
100%.
Definitely. Kenji, medical school. I'm about to move to a peripheral placement. Again, brief explanation. In medical school in the UK mostly, and also at King's College London, you have what are called central placements and peripheral placements when you get to your upper years in 4th and 5th year. So you're either placed in hospitals that are kind of close to the main campus, usually in London, if that's where your university is. And then you have peripheral placements, which are outside of London. And so the benefit of that is being able to go to a different environment, see patients of a different demographic, different background. And also there's all kinds of advantages, smaller hospitals, usually busier, you get more responsibility. There's a whole bunch of pros and cons, but basically I'm moving to a peripheral placement now, similar to I did. If anyone watches, well, I think you probably watch my videos if you're listening to this podcast. But when I moved to the previous one, I was in a city called Dartford, and I'm a little bit nervous, but I know that I had such a great time last time on my peripheral placement that I'm actually more excited than I am nervous this time. And I wanted to ask you, because I know you've been on peripheral placement for some time now. what
Yeah.
your experience has been of being a little bit away, let's say.
Okay. Well, I've actually had the best experience. And actually, I don't think it's necessarily to do with being outside London or being a different environment. I think it's really the people I meet, the people you
Mm.
meet. Because I think maybe in your last blog, I think you met quite a good people.
Yeah,
A group of people
absolutely.
you really, really liked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's really what makes a difference. And it's kind of like traveling, man. Like if I go to the other side of the world
Mm.
and I meet really good people, that really brings out the paradise that I find there. You can be like the best of you in the world, but have people you don't want to be with at all, and that will
Yeah.
completely ruin your experience.
Mm.
So for me, it's meeting really amazing people, but also I think medics in general, and kind of like human beings in general, I think sometimes when you meet a person, if you know you're going to be stuck with them or stuck with them for like a year, 2 years, like I am,
Mm.
a lot of people tend to put a lot more effort into the relationship.
Yeah.
But if you meet someone in med school, and that's one of the downsides of med school, is because when you meet people,
Mm.
you know that the likelihood is you're going to rotate in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
so some people might not necessarily put, and myself included sometimes,
Mm.
may not necessarily put as much effort because you know that I'll know you for like 2 weeks and then may never see you again, unfortunately.
Right.
But being where I am now, outside London for a longer time, means that people, have to get along and put a lot of effort into each other. And that's made my placement so good outside of medicine. Like there's those good like pros in medicine, but outside of medicine, that's been the best experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. Not to be your yes man and back up everything you say, but my experience was very
There's some
similar.
controversy in this podcast, man.
In that, the people that I met on my placement were so warm and welcoming and friendly, and we're just down to have a good time. That it made everything else okay. The fact that I was a little bit further away from my home, I was far from my sister. I wasn't in this room with all my beautiful lights and my camera and blah blah blah. Right. It made everything else not even matter. You were with people who who were just so welcoming, and you build that community environment, like you said, so much more than any other time in medical school.
Yeah, it's a different vibe, man, because in London, it's really, I don't know how you felt, but I found it was very difficult to build that community feeling, especially because now we're a good couple of hours away from London. So the people I'm with now almost have to be my friends. I mean, thank God, like I really love them, but we almost have to form this family. Yeah, we have to form this family in this community because we know for a fact that for the next 8 weeks or more, it's going to be us we're going to be seeing every day, and they kind of become the people you rely on for for your happiness socially, to meet that social demand. So it's a very different vibe to being in London and being in a capital city where you know that your friends are very local, your family are with you, you have your room, you have your space. So it's a very different vibe, and that's actually why I encourage people to leave London and try out a different experience.
It's so true. Because like when I'm living at home and my placement is in London, I go to the hospital, do my thing, say hi to everybody, have a good time, but then I just leave and I go home, and then I don't see them again until the next day or a couple of days later, or maybe even like weeks later. And so you really don't build that community experience, and that's something
so much harder.
I think for me, and I think it's kind of sad to say, but I think on the whole, medical school has been more of a lonely experience for me than my undergraduate degree.
Oh man, I agree so much.
You agree, yeah. Like our class gets split up. I mean, me and you have been such good friends. First and second year, we were so close. We were really good friends.
Yeah, man.
And then we just got separated, and suddenly we weren't seeing each other for the majority of the year. And it just makes everything so much more difficult.
Man. Like I think when we got separated I think it was third year we got separated. I actually had a pretty lonely year third year because I would go to placement, I would see new people every single time. I'd come home, and then you and I and everyone else would try and meet up like once a week, and even that's still difficult because we're all still really busy and we're all still really far with each other. So I guess one of the downsides to medical school that I felt, it's a lot harder to maintain those relationships to a strong degree, man, compared to like first and second year where we'd see each other all the time.
Definitely. Even first and second year, the fact that I wasn't living in halls and I was living at home, here, meant that I had a lot less of that community vibe. And I always, it's tough to differentiate. Did I have less of a community vibe because I had other friends living in London that I could spend my time with? I didn't necessarily have to come back to campus to find that social life and that social involvement. Or was medicine not so much of a community vibe, so I went and hung out with my other friends that live in London? It's hard for me to
Probably a bit of both,
differentiate. Probably a bit of both.
I think you did pretty well though, because I think whenever I'd call you and be like, Nasir, we're going to this place tonight, like, you'd always be there. So I think
Absolutely.
the only difference was you'd have to leave early, like you'd have to take the last train home, or you'd crash on my in my room.
Yes.
But that's quite difficult, man. But I think you did a pretty good job. But being someone who has lived in halls, first, second, third year of medicine, I think even still, it was still a lot more different to my last degree, where when I was doing biomed, it was a very different experience.
Yeah, the undergraduate degree, doing classes together, moving together, studying together, everything was like you just had your bubble and you just
living together.
Oh man, it was amazing. Shout out my undergrad degree.
It's crazy. Yeah, for real, man.
I'm such a nostalgic
and that's when
person.
you really build those strong. Yeah, me too, bro. And that's really when you build those really, really strong, relationships with people, because you're living with them, you're seeing them every single day, you're hitting gym together, you're going out together. It's so hard to describe and to find anywhere else in life.
So true. I have I'm really, really close with so many of my friends from high school. A couple of them live literally down the road, which is fantastic. And I'm also very, very, very close with the group of friends that I made in Toronto. And those two people, we haven't lost touch. We still communicate with each other. If we were to meet up, it's like we saw each other yesterday. And now I'm building another group of those 100%. At medical school, which is incredible. But a lot more effort was needed to create that in medical school for me than either of those two previous situations.
Definitely, man. I think in medical school, you have to be so much more intentional with maintaining those relationships, because if you're not, then it's gone. You have to schedule in those sessions where you will meet up and you will continue. And a lot of that actually with you and I came from going on holiday together. I think we actually didn't really see each other that much in third year. But we'd be like, okay, at the end of term, we know there's 2 weeks coming up where we'll definitely spend 1 week of those abroad. And I think that's actually where we probably formed the closest bonds with all of our friends.
Definitely. Guys, just a little backstory. The way we booked our trip to Marrakesh with 7 or 8 people, I think we were in there. We had just finished our progress test, the final one of the year, and we went to a bar to sit down and celebrate and just relax and whatever. And I think it was Kenji who mentioned it. He's like, "Oh yeah, guys, we should go on holiday." And in my head, when we plan to go on a holiday, I need to be on my computer with a pen and paper and my laptop, Googling things, making a chart, blah, blah, blah. No joke. 2 minutes later, Kenji's like, "All right, guys, we can go to Marrakesh, we can go to Amsterdam, we can go to Paris, we can go here, we can go there. Which one should we book?" And literally within 10 minutes, we had decided where we were going to go, the hotels we were going to stay at, everything. It was incredible. Shout out Kenji, man.
And 24 hours later,
Kenji's a real one, bro. True. We literally left the next day.
It was crazy, man. I didn't even know what currency they had in Marrakesh. Thank God we had you who could speak the language. I didn't even know what language they spoke, what currency they had, who they were. We just turned up, and it was. And that, I think, that's what made it the best experience, because we didn't plan it. We didn't foresee what was coming. So I think also, the more options you give yourself, the less happy you end up being. Because if we went to if we had 10 places planned out, right, and we went to Marrakesh and we had we didn't have the best time, we would look back and thought we should have chosen the other place. But we literally just had one place in our mind. Yeah, exactly. And that's what made it turn out the best experience ever.
Yeah. And everyone who we went on that trip with, we feel very, very close to, because we've been through that sort of bonding experience together.
Exactly,
man. What a
Getting
good time.
lost in a new place.
What a good time.
It's different.
What a good time.
100%.
Kenji, I want to ask you about your experiences in your undergraduate degree. Because we're both graduate medical students. I am 25 now, turning 26 pretty soon. Kenji, you are?
25, just turned 25.
Just turned 25. Shout out Kenji's belated birthday. And so, we're both graduate students. We both have done an entire undergraduate degree. I did mine in biotechnology, microbiology, and molecular genetics. And Kenji did his in biomedical science. Can you tell me about your experience in undergrad? How does it compare to medical school? What are the biggest differences for you?
I'd say the biggest differences, I think, so one was just, I felt there was a lot more stress in my undergrad compared to my medicine. I feel in biomedicine, oh my God, biomedical science was the most stressful time of my life. Nothing compares to that. Because the stakes were so high. You and I knew we wanted to get to medical school, right? It was from day one, we were like, this is our plan. And in order to achieve that plan, we have to rank highly.
Straight A's the whole time.
Exactly. So, a lot more stressful. But again, being in Birmingham and being outside of London, all of my friends were not from Birmingham, so we all lived together. We had to become a family because we knew, like, when we lived for 3 whole years, maybe 4. So we had to form that bond. We lived together. We did everything together. Had the best experience ever. Didn't really travel as much because, again, the stakes were so high that I spent every single holiday grinding out to get into medical school. But I had a really good experience, man. I think very similar to one I think you had as well.
Yeah. When I look back on my undergraduate degree, it kind of like splits down the middle for me. On one hand, I have I've never worked so hard and studied so hard and just committed myself to getting a stupid number on a piece of paper ever in my life. And then the other half is the best growing experience, meeting some of the people I call my closest friends today, just having an absolute blast, learning, growing, exploring. And it's right down the middle. I can't think of one without the other.
100%, man. I think, more than academics, more than a degree, there's so much I was gained in that 3 years going to university. So even if you're watching, you don't necessarily know what you want to do with your degree afterwards. It's not necessarily about the degree, because yes, you will get a qualification, but it's also about the growth that happens throughout those 3 years, man. It was such a different experience.
Not to sound like all spiritual and wishy-washy or whatever, but the growth, the human I became between my first and my 4th year is just so vastly different. And I'm so thankful for it looking back now. At the time, I was devastated that I didn't get accepted to medical school, absolutely crushed. And now looking back, it was amazing. It was amazing, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Definitely. Would you do anything? My friend asked me this the other day. Would you do anything differently if you could go back in time in your undergrad? Do you think?
Yes, definitely. In my first and second year, I would study a bit less.
Okay, 100%. I can agree with that as well.
Honestly, the thing is, if in my first year, in my first semester, in my first courses, if the professor said the reading list is these 10 books here, pages X to Y, then I was like, oh, okay. That's the reading list. That's what I have to do, If my professor said every single lecture is fair game on the test, that was it. That was the word of gospel. Every lecture was fair game. I needed to study every lecture. And it was only actually, I still had that same mindset into 3rd and 4th year, but I just became a little bit smarter about how I studied. I never skipped things out. I never left things out. I always studied every single thing that could come up on a test. But I wasn't so anal about making sure every little detail was written down, was read, blah, blah. That wasted a lot of time in my first and second year.
Okay. No, I did as well. And I think a lot of that for me came with the anxiety of not knowing applying to medical school, right? Because I thought, okay, if I read this reading list, then I will be where I want to be or where I need to be. Whereas at the end of the day, it's the stakes aren't always as high as they seem when you're actually in that position.
Looking back, it's easy.
For one thing. Yeah, and I guess it always is. I think whenever we look back, retrospectively, it's always going to be that way. But looking back now, for example, when I was given the offer to get to medical school, it was based on getting a 2-1, and even still, I still overworked myself. I worked so much more than I really should have to get a first class. And now looking back, I'm like, the first class literally makes no difference in my life. Whether I got a first class or 2-1 would be this exact same outcome. Not a single thing would have made a difference apart from maybe my ego. So looking back now, I think especially my final year, I probably would have worked a little bit less, or maybe worked the same, but not attached the same amount of anxiety to the outcome as I did when I was in biomed.
For me, it was kind of similar, but kind of different in the sense that, so I finished my undergraduate degree with a 3.81 out of 4 GPA, and I worked absolutely tirelessly, put every effort in possible. Studied super hard, made all the sacrifices necessary, blah, blah, blah. And then when I got my offer for a medical school, it was for a 3.6 or 3.65 GPA, somewhere over there. Don't quote me on it. Somewhere over there. And so I had overachieved in terms of what I needed to get accepted to medical school in the UK. However, the average GPA of somebody accepted to U of T, University of Toronto Medical School, the year that I applied was 3.94. And the general average for most medical schools in Canada was somewhere between 3.88 and 3.92, something like that.
Jeez.
And so as a result, I did not get accepted to medical school in Canada. And also there's a big exam that you have to write, kind of like the UCAT, but significantly harder, called the MCAT. and that also plays a role.
Okay.
And I didn't exactly smash that exam. I scored pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it was the 87th percentile. Oh, that's another point.
Okay.
I scored in the 87th percentile of this huge, really difficult standardized exam called the MCAT, but that was nowhere near good enough. So
that's crazy, bro.
So it's crazy. You know, I really consider myself to be hardworking. I don't consider myself to be smart, but I consider myself to put in enough work to learn the things I need to do the things I need to do, disciplined, etc., etc. And I really gave everything that I had over 4 years. I didn't slip for a single course for a single semester. My level of effort and work and discipline was the same throughout.
That's crazy.
And that's what I finished with. And I'm super proud of it. And it's crazy to me to think that wasn't even close.
Yeah, yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
Bro. And the thing is, like, the amount of effort that is needed to get to where you already were, which is like super, super high, to where, like, you know, they were scoring like 3.92, 3.93, 3.94. It's probably like a 150% increase in your work.
Maybe.
Or 100% increase in your work.
In how I was working, for sure. In how I was working, for sure. I'm sure the people who did score like that were not doing the same things as me. They think a little bit differently. Their studying habits are different. And, you know, they're smarter, they're better, they're able to achieve better grades. So I just couldn't compete. It was too much, quite literally.
And bro, let me ask you. I know it's your podcast, right? And you should ask me questions, but let me ask you.
Please ask. It's a conversation.
What do you think about that when applied to medical school? Because in medical school, right, like, you obviously want to do good, you want to become a doctor.
Yeah.
But where are you happy to place or to fall under, where you feel like it's good enough for you to also maintain your YouTube channel, your fitness, you know, your relationship, whatever that might be?
The only thing I want to do is do the best that I can. That's literally it.
Right.
If I study, I'm yet to write an exam in medical school and think to myself, I didn't study enough. It hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen. I'm always going to put in the work to feel like I did enough preparation. And that's like the one safety blanket that I have in this life when it comes to, like, to medical school.
I agree, bro.
That's it. I know that I'm going to do whatever I could do to score as best as I can. And that's it. If I perform poorly, if I perform well.
But if you put in more work, you could always do better, right? I guess you put in more work, or you saying the level where you put enough work where you can't really do any better.
Yeah. So
even more work.
So I do as much as I can within the context of I can't study 15 hours a day because I'm just going to go crazy. I can't even study 10 hours a day for a long period of time outside of, like, USMLE studying time. Within the context of I still need a social life. I need to cook and eat. I need to run and go to the gym. I want to maintain my relationships. Have my girlfriend. Within that context, do the best that I can, but it has to be a fair evaluation. I can't just, like, do an hour a day, be wishy-washy with my learning, and then say to myself, you know what, Nasir, good job. You worked as hard as you could, man. It doesn't matter if you fail. That's not how it is. You have to really you have to know who you are and what you're capable of and what you're willing to do, and do the best that you can. And that's how I see it.
I agree. I agree, bro.
You agree? Thank you, hype man.
Got you.
Nice. Okay, Kenji. Last thing I want to ask you, which I asked to, I think it was Rachel, but I'm not entirely sure. But I'm going to ask again.
Okay.
During this whole coronavirus lockdown, blah, 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 I've been severely demotivated to sit down at my desk and do some studying, watch a Zoom lecture, take notes, blah, blah, blah. Like super demotivated, unbelievably demotivated. And it's taking me twice as much effort to do what I used to do normally in a library or when I was hustling and bustling and whatever.
I feel you.
You feel me?
Me too, bro.
Is there something you're doing that, like, helps ameliorate that helps motivate you? Something you can say to me and anyone listening?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, man. I completely agree. I think when you're, especially now we have 2 weeks off to, like, revise for OSCEs.
Yeah.
It's still really, really hard. Like, we're stuck at home. There's nothing else going on. It's so, I completely feel you on that. And I feel anyone who's in this position is like us. I think the thing that helps me keep going is to remember that we eventually will come out of this. Like, coronavirus is not going to be here forever, right? Like, we 100% will come out of this, you know? And what I have to remind myself is that when I come out of this position of coronavirus, where do I want to be? You know, where do I, because the world's going to keep going, you know, and eventually we will come out of this. Where do I want Kenji to be and how do I want him to be like, right? And remember that, I'm always aiming to be to be a better person. And especially when I come out of this, I want to have been that better person that I plan to be. because I think it's so easy to get trapped in the situation where we think this is our life forever. Like coronavirus very much makes us think that this is our life forever.
Yeah.
And if we let that become the case, then we're not going to come out of this who we want to be. And I think also, interestingly, I think coronavirus can infect our lungs and our body. Like this is a very real thing, right? It's killing those people. It's a virus. We're reminding ourselves that people are catching coronavirus before they even caught coronavirus. Like their minds are catching coronavirus, right? They're getting, from watching the news, from seeing everything that's going on out there, they're becoming very scared and very unmotivated, like you and I are, and it's completely like normal. But we have to make sure not to catch coronavirus before it's even like caught us and before we even have it. I think it's important to protect ourselves and stay at home and stay in lockdown, but it's also more important to protect our minds and make sure that the virus doesn't infect us mentally before it's even got to us.
That's deep, Kenji. That's next level.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, just avoid the coronavirus mindset. I think it's so difficult, and I suffer from it too. But
well said. It's so easy to just get into this mindset of like, today's another day of doing the same thing I did yesterday, and nothing's going to change. Tomorrow's going to be the same. It's just depressing, man. Yeah. It is really a big downer, a big downer.
Yeah, and I think you and I are privileged enough to still have a place to go to. Like we can go to hospital and we can see patients and talk to people. Absolutely. I can only imagine how much more difficult it must be when you're staying home and there's literally nowhere to go until it's all over.
Yeah, one eye deep, like my friends who have been in a room working from home, like an office job for the last year, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Like you're the same as me. Like if we stay in our room for like a day, that's like way too much. Like we need to go outside. We need 100%. To see another human, have a conversation face to face. And like you said, we're so lucky. I feel incredibly blessed that I can leave the house to go to placement and interact with other humans and have sort of still normal life interactions, which a lot of people are missing, which is really, really terrible.
It's a huge blessing, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenji, man, to finish off this podcast, I realize we're coming up on an hour. Can you tell me a little bit about what your goals are with your YouTube channel, what kind of videos you're enjoying making, and sort of where you want to take it from here?
So like anyone, I want to keep growing the channel and reaching as many like people as possible. But also I think where I kind of want to go down is this whole thing that you and I have been talking about, like making videos about dealing with everyday problems aside from academics. I think one thing we all have in common is we all suffer from academic problems, right? Like day-to-day life. But I think I would love to share information about emotional challenges and how to deal with our emotions better, how to deal with our personal lives better. That's where I would love to be and love to go down. So definitely go down there. And just keep growing the channel, reach as many lives as possible, and hopefully continue to get as many people with medical school as possible. But mainly I think the emotional direction will be dope.
Nice. That's a really good twist, or rather like a branch that's like similar enough to what you're doing now, and also like a big enough space where people are interested and there's a lot of value to be provided there as well. Nice.
Definitely, man. Because I think a huge factor that got me into medical school wasn't my academic intelligence, because I don't really rate that like too high actually. I think the emotional intelligence is a huge aspect of getting into medical school for me. Absolutely. And once you can develop that side of your life, I think it makes every other part of your life a lot easier, including your academics, your finances, everything, bro.
Nice. Well said, Kenji. Well said. I know you also you do like online tutoring or advice for aspiring medical students. Is there any? Do you want to say a little bit about that as well?
So on my website, kenjitomita.co.uk, I have services where I help people get into medical school, more like one-to-one tutoring, mock interviews, and also I have a full entire course on the application process. And a lot of those actually I've given loads away for free. So if you're in a position where you're from a less privileged background, you may be struggling with finances like I was when I was applying for medical school. A lot of that actually I give away free. So there's bursaries on there as well. And that's where you can reach me probably the best place other than YouTube.
Yeah. And if anyone needs a reference, like Kenji is the man. Kenji is
thanks, bro.
Really has everyone's interests at heart and wants to help as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, Kenji, where can we find you on social media? Kenji Tomita on YouTube. Bio2med on Instagram. Website, right. KenjiTomita.com.
KenjiTomita.co.uk.
All right. Anywhere else?
That's where you can find them. That's probably the best place.
Yeah. Any shout outs? Any gang?
Hey, shout out to my mum. Shout out to Mumsy. Nah, man.
Not even your
Shout out
dog,
to
the small
myself.
Pomeranian.
Oh, bro.
Shout out
Have you
your
seen that
dog,
Snoop
man.
Dogg thing where he was like, I want to shout myself out for working hard, for always putting in the graft. Have you seen that thing?
No,
No,
you'll send it
I'll
to
send
me
it to you
now.
next, bro.
All right, Kenji and I are
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
gonna
I
go
really
play some Call
appreciate
of
it.
Duty. Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure. And all
A lot of
right,
fun. Thank you,
I'll
man.
catch you later, bro.
See you soon, bro.
Peace, peace, peace. See you soon.
Dope.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Yeah, that was really good, man.
I love that.
That was really, really good. Oh, same. It was a lot of fun, man, and there's good communication and good rapport, man.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of that
Yeah,
sort of reflection that we were talking about before. For me, a lot of the growth in that
definitely.
area is through this podcast and through talking to people at length. Very, very helpful.
That's true,
for
man.
sure.
Ever friend I made in medical school, and a very kind-hearted man who spends a lot of his free time helping aspiring medical students get accepted into medical school. Kenji, welcome to the KharmaKast.
Hey. Bro, are you gonna come on the KharmaKast soon?
Dude,
What emoji should I
I've
give you?
extended my invitation since day one.
What emoji should I give you?
For me?
Look, everyone has an emoji.
I need a cat ASAP.
Ah, of course. Nice.